So her parents are real estate investors, and that kind of helped us, have the mindset of it. But I didn't know how I could buy a rental property. So at the time, it was just like, let's just buy a house. So we bought our first home as a primary residence, owner-occupant, which I only needed 3% down on a conventional loan for. So that was something I could actually afford because there's no way I was going to afford 20% down at that time. So
sure. Well, 3% down on 90 grand, it's like $2,500 bucks. Like,
and
that's not bad at all.
I found a bank, and a lot of banks still do this, but first time home buyer program, where I got $1,000. It was like this deal with the Iowa Wild hockey team. So we actually got to go to an Iowa Wild game. We held up this giant $1,000 check on the teleprompter deal. And then the mascot was at our closing. So,
Crash showed up at your closing?
He was. I need to find that picture because somebody else asked me for it, but I'm like, yeah, we literally have him there with us, at closing. It was super weird.
You're shaking hands and he's going like clapping quietly because they never speak. They're just like clapping.
But that shaved $1,000 off of closing costs. And then we also offered the seller an extra $2,000 total for the asking price, so $92,000 to cover the rest. Which a lot of people don't realize. It's like, even if the seller's not willing to pay, I mean, you can negotiate, but it's like, can I just pay you $2,000 more? Basically, that was our way of getting closing costs wrapped into the loan instead of needing to come with them up front. So it was like $2,000, $2,500 that we brought to closing, bought this house, and we renovated it as we lived there. So we lived there for a year. Our mortgage payment was about $620 a month, and we did things on our own, and we learned as we went through it. We learned how to tile, how to do laminate flooring, how to lay down carpet, and all sorts of stuff. And then after a year, that's when we were like, I need to do something, because I was maybe doing like 40, 42K a year at that time, because I had moved, up positions and become a district manager through that time. And but it's just like, I don't have, anything really set up for my kids for the future to be able to support, my family. Like, what the heck am I going to do? Now I had a passion for what I was doing, but it just didn't pay very well. So like, let's try and buy a rental property. And our thought was, I was driving a lot for work at the time and listening to real estate podcasts and just trying to learn this stuff. And it was harder to get approved for loans and stuff back then, and without needing 20% down for something. Like, it was just like, what the heck am I going to do? I had heard of this method called house hacking, right? Everybody knows what house hacking is. But the picture of house hacking that most people draw is you have to buy a multi-unit property. It has to be a duplex or a threeplex or whatever. You live in one side and you rent out the rest. That is not what we did. So we house hacked. But I wish I knew the guy, but I was listening to a podcast, and he mentioned this method of house hacking where essentially you just buy a property, move into it, live in it for a year, and then move out and rent it out. So that's what we did. We moved out. We bought another property, $130K, that also needed a significant amount of cosmetic work. We moved into it, and then I rented out the first home. So 3% down again for our second home. Had a $620 mortgage. I rented out our first house for $1,200 a month. And that was my first real taste of like, whoa, like we can make money doing this. And we were excited about it. And, the cash flow was essentially paying for the mortgage, plus giving us $600 a month to cover the majority of our next mortgage as well. And it's like, let's build on this. So we ended up moving. We moved a total of 5 times in 5 years. We accumulated children and stuff during that time.